Hello everybody and welcome back to another movie review video. It's been quite some time since I've done a review of a movie and I'm really happy to be back to it. But nonetheless, my name is Joker and today we're going to be going over my spoiler review. It will be spoiler-filled review of X-Men Dark Phoenix. So just in case I wasn't clear enough, this will be a spoiler-filled review. So if you have not seen the movie and would like to before watching this, go buy a ticket, go check it out, come back and finish this video. But until that happens, I'm going to go ahead and get started with my review so you have been warned. So first of all, I would just like to go in saying that Dark Phoenix was not bad, okay? It was not great either, but there were some people out there saying that it was like the worst X-Men film ever and that it was just absolutely dreadful. It was not as bad as people were saying. It was not great, but it was not bad. And I say that knowing that this is also not the worst X-Men film because who's ever going to get past X-Men Origins? Not me. X-Men Origins Wolverine is without a doubt the worst X-Men movie ever. Had a budget of like $3, if you can tell that all of his claws are CGI'd. They're not real like prosthetic claws that he can use. It's a horrible movie, horrible story, horrible Deadpool. If you watched it, you know. If you haven't watched it, save yourself the trouble. This was also a relatively easy movie to understand. You know, I went from start to finish and I didn't have any questions. I could understand the entire plot of the movie. I don't think I need to go in to see it for a second time because I missed something, which is great. You know, unlike, Infinity War and Endgame, which while they're great movies, you really got to watch them a lot because there's just so much going on. You could possibly miss some stuff. With this, it was very straightforward to the point, and that really kind of like probably one of the reasons that it also wasn't an amazing movie is that the plot was very It didn't really gravitate that much. It kind of stayed pretty steady playing throughout most of the movie. But I think that's also one of the things that is a big issue for these movies is that the bar is set so high in superhero movies, especially with the Marvel side of things. You know, Fox is kind of like the black sheep of that because the X-Men series has been its own thing for 20 years, has not touched the MCU, so people really aren't fans of it. They just kind of done their own thing with it. So that movie coming in with its final film for the X-Men franchise and being like, all right, this is it. The bar is set so high for this movie that it's almost impossible for it to succeed. I think if the film came out earlier, say, 2005, 2006, maybe it probably would have done a lot better than it probably is right now as far as the standard goes, but that's just a guess. I will say, though, the cast and the acting and some of the performances in this movie are absolutely fantastic. It is unfortunate that Jennifer Lawrence really didn't want to be Mystique much longer and was tired of all the makeup, so yeah, she does end up dying in this movie. She goes through not a whole lot of makeup. She's got a lot of makeup on her face, but she's wearing the X suit the entire time, so she's not in full body makeup all the time. And even some scenes, she's in her human form, so she doesn't have all the makeup on either. And then, so I felt that was a little weird because I thought it was really awkward that she just did not want to be a part of this anymore. So while that was a factor, it did not stop her acting from being what it should have been, and I feel that her performance in this movie was actually a lot better than it was in First Class and in Days of Future Past. But James McAvoy, Sophie Turner, and Michael Fassbender, amazing performances across the board, and Nicholas Hoult, of course, great performances across the board. Everyone was doing a fantastic job. Alexandra Shipp, who plays Storm, great. I feel like she really got to go into her character as opposed to an Apocalypse where she was introduced. She was really her own real character in this movie, and she had a better arc. I would say it wasn't so much of like an origin of learning who she was. She knew who she was and she was ready to get right into the part and show off what she could do. I thought that was fantastic. It really drove a lot of the plot along. But going back to it, honestly, Michael Fassbender just nails it every time as a young Magneto. And that's one of the things I love about between him and Ian McKellen is that with Ian McKellen in the original X-Men movies, he's a lot older, he's more sophisticated, so he knows what he's capable of, and he doesn't like make a big deal out of it. He's just like, yes, check this out, metal, whap, you're dead. And a lot of the things with Michael Fassbender's version is that he's just so dead set on like, if you don't agree with me, I'm just going to get you out of my way by whatever means necessary. And you can really see that a lot in this movie, when he has conflict on screen with Sophie Turner, who plays Jean Grey. There's a lot of going back and forth with the characters, and it's just instantly, yeah, absolutely, you messed up, so you have to die. There's no way around it. And I think it's just crazy to see the differences between the younger versions of Eric in both this version and then in the older early 2000s version when he's played by Ian McKellen. Now, as far as the plot goes, there's some weird stuff going on. Obviously, it's Dark Phoenix, so they're retelling the Dark Phoenix storyline. I don't know exactly the origin of how it's supposed to go in the comics, so as far as accuracy goes, I'm throwing it out the window because I have no idea. So the film started, with a young Jean Grey. She's about 8 at the latest. Maybe she might be even like 5. I can't remember. I don't know if they gave her age, but she's very young in the beginning. She's in the backseat of the car with her parents and they're driving, and she's asking her mom to change the radio station. Her mom's like, after this song. And then she's complaining about the music, and her mom just says to her, when you're old enough to drive, you can play whatever music you want. And then the radio station changes. And it's because she's using her powers, but I guess she's not realizing it. And the mom asked the dad, she's like, hey, why'd you change the station? He's like, I didn't change the station. So they change it back, and then it starts flipping all over the place. And they're like, Jean, are you doing this? And she's like, I'm not doing anything. And then she starts complaining about it being so loud. She's like, please be quiet, because she's starting to get it all in her head. And then they end up in a car crash, and her parents end up dying, and then she gets taken by Charles Xavier into the School for the Gifted. So you get the little backstory of how Jean Grey comes into play. We all kind of know how it happens, but this is just a retelling so everyone knows going into the movie. So the next thing it shows is their mission. So they're going into space to help this spacecraft that crashes in like 1992 is when this part takes place. And after they save them, it was because there's a quote-unquote solar flare that wasn't really a solar flare. It was just an immense amount of power that they go. And in the process of saving the astronauts, Jean Grey takes the full blast of this flare, and she absorbs all the power, giving her the Dark Phoenix capabilities. And afterwards, she's like, oh, I feel fantastic. Nothing's wrong with me. So they just kind of forget about it. And then it goes into the antagonist of the films, which is what really lost me, which is this alien race called the Dabari, and they're after the power of the Phoenix so they can restore their life on their planet, because it was destroyed by this, and there's only like a few of them left, and they're going to harness this power to grow life over Earth and turn Earth into their new planet, killing all the humans and then restarting their species there. So the main plot just revolves around Jean Grey trying to harness this power that she has. She has no control over it. She doesn't want it. She doesn't exactly know what she can be doing with it. And she ends up killing Mystique by blasting her into a broken house. So she got some wood shrapnel spikes that kind of go through her, and it's pretty graphic, and that's the thing that happens. And then everyone gets mad at Charles, saying it's all his fault. He locks away the memories of Jean's past in her head, so she doesn't have to deal with the trauma of her parents being killed. It's just kind of a mess, really, because it just kind of jumps through it really quickly. A lot of the people don't even get great screen time. Quicksilver is in like 2 scenes, and then that's it, and the rest of it just revolves around Nightcrawler and Storm and Cyclops. It's just a weird flow to the movie. The plot was very basic. I couldn't necessarily tell where it was going. I went in with the intention thinking that, 1, the movie wasn't going to be good, and that 2, it was going to end with the X-Men getting killed off, because this is the last Fox film before Marvel takes back the property of the X-Men. That obviously did not happen. So I had no idea exactly where it was going to go from the start. But the main plot, to my understanding, is that she ends up killing Mystique, and then everyone starts going after her. Mutants are, great. Everyone likes them. They got the X phone. The president calls them for missions. And then this thing happens with Jean, and all of a sudden it's back to mutants are evil and they need to be destroyed. And then Magneto starts coming after her because she killed Mystique. And then Charles is trying to save her from that and get rid of the power of the Dark Phoenix. So it's a very basic plot. It doesn't really have a lot of ups and downs. It is very stagnant most of the time. And I think some of the roles are overplayed, and some of the roles aren't the roles that they should have been. And I say that because there's a lot of times within the X-Men that stuff happens and they say certain things, or they act a certain way, and I'm just like, that's not how the X-Men would act. There's a lot of scenes where Charles Xavier, he's getting angry, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's trying to fix it, and he's fighting with Eric, and I'm just like, I don't feel like that's something that Charles Xavier would do per se. Of course, Eric just wanting to go ahead and kill her right off. He'd be like, nope, I'm Magneto, I'm going to kill everyone. That's what he does, and I understand that. And then the whole thing with Beast, Hank McCoy, he's just really pissed off. He's blaming Charles Xavier for all of this that happened. It's all his fault. You're the reason that Raven was killed. And it's just a giant mess of there's a lot of emotions in this film, and I'm like, I don't think that this is how the X-Men would actually act. This seems just like a random assortment of emotions that's going on in this movie, and I don't think it actually connects with who the characters would be to it. I don't think it's exactly how they would be acting on screen as they have in the past. There are a lot of great choreographed fights in this movie. There's a great sequence on the train ride that happens toward the end of the movie where Nightcrawler just goes into his fit of rage and just starts going at it with everyone on the train, disappearing left and right and breaking necks, stabbing people, and it's great. And then Magneto eventually turns and he's like, no, we need to stop this alien race from killing Jean, because we realize it's not Jean's fault that this is happening. And they realize that if they end up killing Jean, that they're going to take this power and use it to wipe out the human race anyway, so they kind of need to not let that happen. So everyone's like, yeah, okay, we're on Jean's side, we need to protect her and stop this race from destroying everything, because they're just like unstoppable killing machines, so to speak. They're like basically human, but with extreme super strength and super agility. It's ridiculous. Everyone thinks they're mutants and they're not, and they realize that very quickly. So obviously they end up fighting it out and they get through everything. They kill off the alien race, and then Jean has a final showdown with the main alien that has already absorbed some of her power to begin with earlier in the film. So they end up fighting, and she's trying to use the power of the Phoenix to destroy this the Dabari. And in the process, people start kind of like fading. Like, she starts dusting people like Thanos did with the snap. It's insane. They're all coming at her, and she's just like throwing her hands up, and they just turn to ashes. It's ridiculous. But when it comes down to the final fight, she's trying to use all of her power to destroy this last one, who also has the same power. And then it turns out that everyone else is kind of starting to fade too. So Scott's just like, whoa, Jean, what are you doing? And his hand's starting to disappear, and she realizes that she doesn't have the ability to control this. So Jean takes it straight up into space and pretty much just supernovas and destroys everything in order to save everyone. And then the flames go out into the shape of what's supposed to be a phoenix, and that's just kind of like that she became the Phoenix kind of thing. And that's pretty much how that movie comes to an end. It's pretty abrupt. And then the next scene is like they skip a funeral for it, but they end up showing Scott walking out to the front gate with a sign, which is supposed to be Charles Xavier School for the Gifted. And then it turns that they change it to Jean Grey School for the Gifted in honor of her. And Hank McCoy ends up becoming the head of the school, and Charles Xavier ends up retiring. So it's a very, very different ending that I was expecting all around. For one, just because it is the end of the X-Men franchise, I'm expecting a lot more of them to be killed off. And now seeing that, obviously it's the end of the franchise, so that's how it's going to end. It's going to end with Jean Grey School for the Gifted being the name of the school, but we're never going to see any of it again because now it's all being transferred over to Disney with the Marvel properties. So it was very weird. But when it's all said and done, I didn't hate it. There's a couple things that really bothered me. If I can find a picture of it, I'll throw it up on the screen, but there's just one small thing that bothered me, and it's that when they enter Cerebro and Charles Xavier puts the helmet on, if you look at like the notches over here, one of them is significantly different from the other one. It is not, the arches in the helmet aren't symmetrical, and it really just bothers me so much, but that's just minor things. The score for the movie is fantastic. I was listening all the way through and I was just like, this score is just absolutely gorgeous. And I wasn't even thinking of who wrote it. Then the credits roll and it said it was Hans Zimmer. So I was just like, that makes perfect sense. Hans Zimmer is one of my favorite composers. So to think that to see his music in this movie, I thought would just fit perfectly and really tied in a lot of the scenes together. He has such a way of just plucking heartstrings in certain scenes when he just has like certain chords that play, and it really just adds to the effect of the movie. But overall, would I see it again? Probably not. I'll wait, and I'll probably buy it on Blu-ray and watch it a couple times after that. It's just because that's what I do. But I think seeing it in theaters one time was good enough. It was fun. I got to see the whole movie, and I understood it from start to finish without any interruption or anything like really distracting me from it. It was really easy to watch. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6 out of 10. That's my rating for the film. It's good, but it's not fantastic. It's also not terrible. The plot is just very slow and mellow. It doesn't have a really expansive, crazy plot line or anything. It's just very straightforward. So you kind of already know what's going to happen as the movie develops. There are some scenes in there that are a little awkward. And there's a lot of some of the acting is a little strange as far as like I was mentioning earlier, as how they act towards certain events, whereas where the actual X-Men would act in. So, there's just some choices that are made that I don't think the X-Men would truly do in the comics or something like that. Again, that's just an idea that I had. But I have a lot of nerd friends that are into comic books, and I would definitely recommend this movie to them, just because, for one, it is a big deal. It is the closing arc of the X-Men Fox franchise that we've had for the past 20 years. So it's really cool to see how the characters are going to finish out and what the arc is going to end with before it gets moved over to Disney. And overall, it's just not a terrible movie. Like I've said, sure, I'll see it again. I'll probably buy it and watch it from there. I'm not going to go back to theaters and see it, but it's definitely worth a one-time watch in a theater. So if you for some reason you're watching this and you haven't seen it yet, and you don't really care, you wanted to hear all the spoilers anyway, definitely go ahead and go see it because, it's worth watching. But that's going to be it for my review of Dark Phoenix, guys. Remember, if you like what you saw, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of X-Men Dark Phoenix if you've seen it yet. Let me know if you're going to see it again, if you haven't seen it, and let me know what you rate the film on a scale of 1 to 10. Also, let me know of what you think of the X-Men franchise as a whole. Do you like it? Do you not? Are you happy it's moving over to Disney, or were you happy with it being with Fox? Let me know. I want to talk about it. But until then, and as always, I will see you guys next time.